Next is approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
The minutes will stand approved as submitted. What's next, please?
Next is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the redevelopment agency may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for investigation and a report.
Mr. Clerk, do we have any oral communication cards?
Not for oral communication.
Oral communication is closed. What's next, please?
Next is a business agenda. At 6A is a public hearing. Director of Development Services regarding proposed 54-unit residential apartment development located at 525 West Elk Avenue. 6A1 is resolution certifying and adopting a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring program for the project. 6A2 is motion approving Stage 1 and 2 design proposal for the project subject to comments and conditions from the city's Design Review Board, Principal Urban Designer, and agency.
Thank you. And with that, I'll go to Mr. Starwood.
Now I'll go to Mr. Lanzafame for the staff report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, this is a 54-unit condominium project, as was announced in the title. It is in the SFMU zone, which was part of the San Fernando Road zoning corridor rezoning that the City Council adopted some time ago. The project is looking for its all of its entitlements. You will be reviewing design review stages 1 and 2, as well as considering certification of a mitigated negative declaration. Bob Cadillac, Senior Project Manager in Development Services, will introduce you to the project and introduce you to the development team, which will go over their design with you.
Thank you. Mr. Cadillac, your name for the record, please.
Robert Cadillac, Development Services. What the clerk is passing out to you right now is at the top of the color rendering is a southern elevation of the project next door to this one, 525. This is the Alliance project, which you will see next week. And there was some questions about what's next door, what does it look like, what's the contextual nature. And so the top thin picture is that building facing Elk, so that's the southern elevation, for the record.
And that's a south elevation.
And that's the southern elevation of 525, which we're going to be introducing. As Mr. Lanzafame said...
The building will be right here.
Correct. It'll be on your right side. As Mr. Lanzafame said, it's a 54-unit residential condominium project at 525 West Elk. It received Stage 1 and Stage 2 approval from Stage 1 from the Design Review Boards with very, very positive comments. There were significant changes made to this project from when it was originally introduced. It had a much different style, and to work within the context of the neighborhood, which has some single-family, some multifamily, and some craftsman elements, the applicant and developer made significant changes to the design, working with the principal urban designer. So we have to compliment the applicant on that. It was a completely different project and design when it first came in, and we think it looks much better. It fits with the adjacent project, and it fits with the residential neighborhood. And I think the best thing to do is just introduce Rodney Kahn, who's the applicant. He can guide you through the project, and then the architect can answer specific questions on any details you might have.
Okay.
Rodney?
Chairman, you may want to consider opening the public hearing.
At this time, I'll open up the hearing, the public hearing. Your name for records.
Sure. Good afternoon, Chairman and agency members and staff. My name is Rodney Kahn, and my offices are located here in the city of Glendale. As Bob mentioned, the original design was very different. We had more of an industrial-looking building, and we went back and we did something that we consider more contemporary craftsman. And that's what you see in front of you in terms of what the design is. We felt that in terms of the area, some of the buildings, the residential buildings in the area, have that craftsman-like feel to it. So we figured in terms of this neighborhood and the direction it's going, it certainly seemed the appropriate style. Our project is 54 dwelling units. It is an ownership project, so it will be condominiums. The 54 units are within a 4-story building envelope. We have 123 on-site parking spaces, which is in 2 levels of subterranean parking. We have, in terms of the amenities, is there a handheld mic I could get from you? Thank you. Thank you very much. In terms of the on-site amenities for the project, we have a swimming pool, we have a children's play area, we also have a recreation room, we have outdoor seating, we have gardens that could be used and enjoyed by the residents, a number of on-site amenities, both passive and active. We're also in a very good location of the city as it relates to parks. We have Pacific Edison Park that is nearby, along with elementary school as well. There's been some modifications and some dedications that are required in terms of the street widening for the project. We have also provided with you, and you see the plans in front of you, in terms of the units. The 54 units basically breaks down into 52 two-bedrooms, one three-bedroom, and one one-bedroom. The average unit size is about 1,250 square feet. Our architect is here. He's happy to further expand on the project. He'll talk to you a little bit about the colors, the materials, and what his vision is for the architectural style. I'll conclude my remarks, and any questions you have, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions? I have a question. Mr. Khan, you have submitted documents, page 304. The in-lieu fee calculation shows that it's 70,479 square feet. And then on the second section, on the following page, it says initial study checklist. It says the application is proposing the construction of a 54-unit, 65,551 square feet multifamily. Why is there a discrepancy between these two, almost 5,000 square feet?
Mr. Yusefian, the answer lies in the way the form is worded and how it's filled out. When you look at the sheet that's been submitted, and it's page 2 of the IHP form, it says, describe project and chart. You give square footages for the units. Then the way that the fee was adopted, if you look at B, it says gross livable floor area of proposed project, including private balconies, decks, and patios. So when you factor in the private decks and balconies and patios is where you get the additional 5,000 square feet. So each unit approximately has about 100 square foot balcony. That gets added in as well, so that's where the 70,000 square foot number comes from.
And that's the, Ms. Van Meiden, is that how we passed the ordinance, to include the balconies and as part of the in-lieu fee?
Chair, members of the agency, I'm going to double-check that while we're continuing with our discussion, and I will verify that prior to the end of the year.
Okay. All right.
I'm getting actually a confirmation from Hassan Haghani that that is the way that the calculation is done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'll have some other questions from your architect, but we'll deal with that later.
Thank you.
Mr. Kasakian, anybody else on the cards? Go ahead, call him.
Mr. Varush Saroyan.
Your name for the record, please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Varush Saroyan. I'm an architect on record, and I would be happy to answer any specific questions that you have.
You're the architect?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver, you have questions?
No.
It's here just for questions.
No, I'll make my comments on it in a minute.
I have some questions, and most of the questions is relative to what staff has put forward, and one of the items that comes to mind is, and these are the two specific design recommendations, and it says, in addition to placing the recreation room adjacent to the lobby, also consider extending the entry trellis over both the garage entry and the recreation room. Did you incorporate those suggestions into your new design?
We
including
had-
moving the recreation room to the front lobby.
Yes. In regard to the trellis design, we had a couple of meetings with Mr. Alan Loomis, and together we decided it's better we leave it this way. In regard to the recreation room, we decided that if the recreation room is going to be closer to the children's play area, it will better serve the purpose rather than moving it away from that. That's the reason we didn't do it.
Okay, was that a concurrence of the staff on that, too?
We did.
Yeah.
We had a kind of a clearance and a blessing from Mr. Alan Loomis as well.
Mr. Loomis? Is that what your understanding is?
Alan Loomis from Planning Department. In all fairness to the applicant, that comment was made after they submitted their final materials for your consideration. So it's, if they choose not to accept that recommendation, they have alternative viewpoints. So it's fine. We've worked through the design up to this point. They've been very responsive, so I'm happy with the design at this point.
So at this point, you're happy with the design, it's
Yes.
okay. I would appreciate it from now on, even though things have been submitted, sometimes you have to submit things 3 weeks in advance. If things change, we're always given a document in the last minute. I would appreciate
Sure.
that, because I do give some value to what the staff recommendation is. So if you guys are happy with it, I'd like to know about it, so then I won't waste anybody's time asking the
Fair
question.
enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I have one question in regard to, any other questions from the architect?
Close the public hearing?
No questions?
No.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing at this time. No more speakers on this item?
I guess there is now.
There is one. Okay, a public hearing is still open. Please read that in the record, Mr. Kasaki.
Mr. Herbert Milano.
Mr. Milano, your name for the record, please. It's not oral communication, it's on the item.
That's correct. Members of the Redevelopment Agency, my name is Herbert Milano. As I have taken a look at environmental impact reports for different projects going back to 1991, I find that as our population increases, the cumulative impact of the increased population needs to be addressed with regard to the impact on open space and parkland. The one particular project, this particular project, I think is an excellent design. I have no qualms with it. But what I want to remind the Redevelopment Agency is that the objectives that we had in the recreation element, with a minimum requirement of 1 acre for 1,000 residents, should be looked at as we continually to accept additional residences in the area. It's just a reminder that as you try to move forward and validate or approve the environmental impact report, that we need to know how each additional project is impacting us with regard to that requirement for developed parkland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The hearing is closed. Any comment from staff? Any comments from my colleagues? Mr. Weaver.
Well, I look at this and I look at the one next door. No, it's one of those, the second I looked at it, I liked it. I'm big into Spanish, Mediterranean, all that. But something about this, when I looked at it, I like the architecture on it. I like the stoops going up in the front, getting the first floor elevated some. I just plain like it. It's a, like you say, it's a design that will move over the periods of time. It won't age. The other one, it's night and day difference what's next door. I wish it was more like this one. No offense, but I just like it. That's all I can say. So I have no problems with it. That's it.
Mr. Quintero, then Mr. Manukian.
I also am very pleased with the design. As usual, Mr. Soroyan did a very good job. I like the idea that it's kind of got that craftsman type of look, and it's going to be a great addition to the neighborhood. If you drive by this site currently, what an improvement this is going to be. So, very pleased to vote for it today.
I would like to request from staff that any color photos that they scan into the
CDs, have them scanned in color, because everyone has color photographs. I have a black and white photograph that I'm looking at, and I have no idea what it looks like, except for looking at my colleagues' pictures. Thank you. I know, but just for the record, for any reports that come to the council, anything that's put on the CDs and scanned, if it's in color, it should be in color.
And you are missing some rich colors, Mr. Mnuchin.
I can
want
see
you to
that.
know this is what probably struck me about the project, is that light green or the olive green color in contrast with the redwood wooden beams that bring out the craftsman flavor of the building. I like it very much. I do wish that this other building next door to it would incorporate some of those fine articulations that this one has, but that's not before us today. I think it's a great project, very well designed, and it's going to be a great addition to the city.
Just like that, I hope the final product looks like the rendering, in terms of colors, whatever. I'm assured it will.
If it gets built.
If? When?
You never know.
That's wrong.
I have a couple of questions. Anybody from the street department on the EIR? My question on the EIR is, there's a section in there that talks about the street widening of 1 foot on Elk Avenue adjacent to the subject property, and 3 foot in order to ease the congestion to the area. I need to know what it's going to do to the street. How wide is that street going to become? I mean, we're putting 54 units next to a 200 unit. We're talking about 254 units on Elk. They're going to get in and get out of Elk, both of those. Okay, that's 500 vehicles getting in and getting out of that street. I drive that, and on top of that, you have a freeway that dumps on the street too. Let's not forget that. So that street is right now is a 2-lane street, very narrow. I don't think it's more than 25 feet even. So what is 1 foot going to make a difference?
The traffic engineer, Chairman Yusefian, the traffic engineer, as a condition of project approval, asked that both projects give 3-foot dedication, and they're going to widen the street by 1 foot on each side, I think taking it to 33 feet, curb to curb.
Okay.
I'll check that number and get back with you.
And so how many lanes that's going to be?
That's going to be two full lanes in both ways and a turn lane in the center.
Okay. So
Right now
that is going to do that compared to what it is. Okay, so
they've been consistent in both this and the ISIS project, as they would be in any other project comes along in the future.
Okay, so are we going to do this when the projects are built, or are we going to wait for the other apartments that is all the way on the end toward Pacific before that gets done?
They're going to do it as when these projects are built.
When the projects are built?
Correct.
Okay. The other thing that I see missing in here, and you see it also missing in the drawings, is when you go to the landscaping page, and I didn't see it in the drawings in here. Is there any trees currently on the street?
There are
sidewalks?
There are some street trees that are going to be replaced by, and I'll let Rodney tell us which trees were chosen.
Because it is not shown in the drawings in here. And in the rendering also, if you look on that rendering, there are no street trees shown in here. I just want to make sure that there is going to be street trees there, so long as it is the same palette as the city's arborists.
Correct.
So if there is a motion to approve, I want to make sure that that is in there, so this way we don't end up taking the sidewalks out and put new sidewalks in and then forget about the trees, because if they're going to widen it, they're taking all that stuff out.
They're going to be put in enclosures with metal grates, and I believe the species is Chinese pistachio, but I'll ask Mr. Khan to confirm that.
Okay.
That's correct.
Is it accurate? Okay.
And both projects both that and the ISIS project will be using the same palette of trees and the same grade. So when you walk down Elk, it will look consistent on both sides of the street.
Okay. Now, if it is not showing in any of these drawings, do we need to include that in our motion, or where is this written?
Chairman, if I may, any
Yes.
of your comments are already incorporated in the way that the motion is written, subject to any agency comments or conditions.
Thank you very much.
Incorporated therein. And while I have the podium, I'd like to also say that the motion needs to be revised. It refers to a residential apartment project. It's a condominium project.
Right.
So it would be as revised.
Okay. And with those revisions, is there a motion to move forward with these items? And how do we move this?
6A1 and 2.
Do we move them both together, or?
With the changes that was made by the city attorney, subject to the
You don't
comments by
need
the
to do the EIR first before you approve the design? Oh, you don't need to do that?
Mitigated negative declaration.
You could do them both together.
Need to move. You can move them together, but if you choose to move them separately, the mitigated negative declaration must be certified first.
It's been moved and seconded already.
There's a motion to move and second both items. Roll call, please. Modifications, as Ms. Van Wyden suggested.
Agency members Menuchyan.
Yes.
Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Chairman Yusefian.
Aye. What's next, please?
Any agency member or staff comments? Any new business?
Yeah, we
Move to adjourn.
do we want to discuss the 15th?
What's the 15th? We can't discuss it. We can.
You want to say something about the 15th?
About the investment window?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, announcement. On March the 15th, next Thursday at 2 o'clock, we'll be holding an event called Invest in Glendale. We have invited many of the region's top brokers, investors, developers, bankers, investment people to come and see a presentation on what's happening in Glendale. There's quite a lot of activity that is currently underway. There's a lot of activity that's proposed, and we merely want to showcase the investment opportunities that exist in Glendale. It will be from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock at the Alex Theater. We'll have the presentation. It'll begin around 2:45, 2:30, 2:45, and there'll be a small reception afterwards, a networking opportunity for those that in attendance to meet with staff and discuss some of the opportunities. Next Thursday, 2 o'clock at the Alex Theater.
And there's no charge to anyone who wants
There's
to
no
attend?
charge.
Been invited specifically, it's merely an oversight?
No, they have to RSVP.
We want RSVPs.
We would like RSVPs to the redevelopment
So it's not
agency.
just walk in off the street, it's RSVP.
And the event is really tailored to those groups, but it is a good overview of what's happening.
It's not a public
in
meeting.
terms of development in Glendale.
Invitation only.
Well, not invitation, RSVP at least.
Pretty wide invitation.
With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
There was motion for a second.
Okay, we're adjourned. We have a study session.
2:30.
Well, this Invest in Glendale.
Oh, it's down here, huh?
No, we have a study session right here.
Joint meeting.
Oh,
Joint study session.
oh, with that heavy parcel, that turnout that we got. Jeez, almost got away.
It'll be on the front of the folder in the flaps usually.
How much was there past that? This? Is there a handout?
There should be there's a PowerPoint.
Or was it just that,
There's a small.
this thing?
Yeah.
That was it?
We have a section.
I'll have them do it.
So it's a joint. Okay.
GRA.
Joint, yeah. I'd like to call to order the joint meeting of the Glendale City Council Redevelopment Agency study session on discretionary permits and the downtown specific plan zone will be called to order at 3 p.m. on March the 6th. May we have a roll call?
Council members Menuchyan, Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Weaver.
Here.
May I have a roll call for agency, please?
Agency members Menuchyan, Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Yusefian.
Here.
Mr. Kasakian, do we have a report from you at all?
This is a joint study session of the Glendale City Council and the City of Glendale Redevelopment Agency. Options to consolidate review authority over discretionary permits, example CUP, variance, etc., within the downtown specific plan area.
Okay, and Mr.
I'll go to Mr. Hagai.
Starbird and ask what you're asking out of this study session. Direction?
Sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the agency. This was one of the follow-up items after the Downtown Specific Plan was adopted to come back with a discussion on the review authority within the Downtown Specific Plan area. What we have, what Tim Foy, Principal Planner, is going to present to you is a number of things. In the Downtown Specific Plan area, part of the Downtown Specific Plan area is actually the Central Redevelopment Area, where the agency has authority over several review practices, and then the ZA actually has a review authority over some other things. And then outside the redevelopment area, for the most part, the zoning administrator hears several discretionary review permits. What we're going to present to you is going to, Tim has actually identified the various levels of complexity within and outside the redevelopment area in the DSP. Yes.
Question, on the outside of the agency, what's on the peripheral
Well,
area?
no, as you remember, the downtown specific plan area actually covers a part of downtown. Only a portion of the downtown specific plan area is a redevelopment.
Right.
And then the rest is not, and within the same boundaries of the DSP.
Okay, because you said three components, I thought.
There are three components.
Downtown
One
and
is within the redevelopment area, there are items that the agency reviews
Understood.
today. Yes.
Understood. Then in the downtown specific plan area
Yes.
is the bigger. I thought you said a third. Did I misunderstand?
The rest of the city.
Well, there are three issues to consider within the downtown specific plan area.
But there are only two areas, the
Okay.
city area and the redevelopment agency project
I just
area.
misunderstood.
In the downtown
yes.
The
specific
downtown
area.
specific plan.
Sorry for not being clear. So there are two areas, but three issues to consider.
Okay.
One is within the redevelopment area, if you would like to expand the agency's review authority, and to what extent you would like to expand that. And then outside the redevelopment area and within the non-redevelopment area, if you would like to transfer some of the zoning administrator's authority to the city council to be done jointly with the agency. And then the third piece is to what extent you would like to do either.
Okay.
Thank you. And with that, Tim, if you would please start.
Some of the implementation details are, well, detailed, we get into nitty-gritty, but the concept is really pretty simple. What we will talk about is how the approval process works now, and then, as Hassan said, we'll talk about what level of the zoning authority review would be transferred if you're of such a mind. May also consider design review from the DRB as well. And then the question of, do you want this to be just affecting the redevelopment area or the entire DSP zone? And just to be a little bit more specific, the parts of the downtown specific plan zone that are not in the redevelopment area are what we call the East Broadway area, roughly from here to Louisa, Maryland, the south side of Colorado, and the west side of Central. That's not all of it, but that's most of it. So the agency right now, within the redevelopment project area, conducts design review. You approve parking exceptions and environmental documents in connection with the above. If you were of a mind to take over some of the ZA's authority, I should note it would technically be the city council doing that, and you would do it in joint sessions. State law just doesn't allow you to transfer that authority to the redevelopment agency, but you can do it in joint meetings. It's not a problem to work out. The things you don't review are CUPs, variances, and parking use permits and requests for parking reduction.
And would the state allow these items to be transferred to redevelopment agency? On a joint meeting?
Conditional use permits and variances, I believe they will not. I'm not sure about the latter.
The parking would. Parking use and parking reduction could be transferred.
But it would be simple to just
Well, that's right, a parking exception already is.
Well, you already have parking exception there, and then you have two other things, parking use and request for parking reduction. I mean, it's almost redundant.
No matter how you characterize it, the answer is yes.
Okay, so you can put two of them under the agency, but the other two would have to be done by the city.
By the city. And again, it's through a joint meeting. It could be worked out.
Okay. Continue.
Okay. And outside of the redevelopment project area, obviously projects are subject to regular planning and zoning reviews, the design review board, ZA hearings, and sometimes there's some level of planning staff review for some of these permits we've mentioned. So what we'll do for each of these types of permits, we'll explain basically what the code looks at. We'll give you a very brief synopsis of how many hearings and what types of subjects come up under these various kinds of permits, and also ask for direction. I will say we have made an initial suggestion just to get conversation going, and in your handout you'll see those in italics. That's just to get conversation going, and basically they all have the same theme of whether you want to hear CUPs and variances if they're not related to new construction and design review. Whether you should restrict your review of variances and CUPs to those that come with design review and new construction, as opposed to a later change of use in an existing building. So currently, the agency conducts design review in two stages. You have VRB input before each stage, and the ZA hearings for variances and CUPs must occur prior to stage 2, design review. And so this is the sort of questions we'll be asking you to think about as we go through each of these types of permits.
I may stress why we would like you to think through these is that the number of the cases that the ZA hears on these could be sometimes large and sometimes smaller depending on the level of activity we have, and that would mean to what extent you would like to have your agenda filled with these types of hearings.
Right. Obviously, the advantages are for the applicants to streamline the process. Someone who's building a new building, they don't have to bounce back and forth between different hearing bodies. An advantage from the city's point of view is that it's a holistic review. You view projects all of a piece. There may be variances you might want to consider when you're doing design review as the agency. There certainly might be conditional use permits if if at the time of construction they know and are planning of a use which has impacts that may affect how you might want to design the building.
Do you have numbers of cases that the ZA has been having and the complexity of them?
Yes, we'll get to that, and you'll see it's actually not a lot. I mean, the disadvantage is potentially crowding your agendas.
That's what I was concerned about.
Right.
Crowding.
Well, I think another issue we have to take into consideration is the zoning administrator is a professional who probably has a degree in planning, urban design, etc., or 5 elected officials who don't. So let's be frank about the expertise of professional staff members and elected officials voting on variances and CUPs, et cetera, et cetera.
I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. Does that count?
With your knowledge of
Express?
Conditional use permits basically fall into two categories. There are those that are going to be proposed when new construction is proposed, and then when the building's already existing, a change of use. We could, legally, there's no problem to create a two-tier system of which things need council hearing and which might stay at the ZA. It could be that there would be some uses which are so impactful that even if they're occurring in an existing building, you might still want to hear them. That's a decision you could choose to make. But many cities have this major CUP, minor CUP distinction. It's pretty easy, pretty workable.
Can we do, originally when we talked about this in the context of the downtown specific plan, we wanted to deal with new projects because we had a certain vision. In order to accomplish that vision, we wanted to deal with those aspects of it. So to me, I think dealing with the CUP of a new construction is more important than something that's already existing. If it's a change of use or whatever, I mean, that's something that going through the regular process, it's not changing any of the structure. But if somebody's coming in and needs a CUP, for example, a building, condominium project in a RMUR area, generally will require a CUP because that's how the code is written. In order for them to get a CUP, they have to have an EIR. They can't get the CUP because the EIR has to be approved by agency or council first before they can get their CUP. So there is this little dichotomy down there which we can resolve on a new structure when we put it all together. So this way then they can come and they'll get their EIR approved, and then after that we will do the CUP hearing, and if they get approved then we can move to the final design and then just move on. So there is a process that gets followed. But on an old existing building, I don't think you have all of those parts in play. I think maybe, I don't know what my colleagues feel. I mean, I only thought on the new buildings, not the old ones.
On the design?
Well, on the CUP, I mean, the building is there. Did you change your use? Do I want to even hear that? I mean, if it's controversial, at one point it's going to get appealed to us anyway. So those we have to deal with regardless. But if it's not controversial and the ZA makes a decision, there's no appeal.
Who makes a decision whether it's controversial or not?
Then it comes to us.
But
Somebody
how do you know
appeals
it's a
it.
decision?
Somebody appeals it.
No, but how do you know something is controversial and it should go to the ZA? Just because it's a change of use?
Well, no, what I'm saying is if it's a change of use, it goes to ZA. We don't have to listen to it because the ZA will, let's say, grants the variance. If it happens to be a controversial issue, the people on the other side will appeal that. It will go to BZA, and then it gets appealed to us, ultimately. So if it's a major issue, we will end up listening to it anyway. But 9 out of 10 times, most of those things go through the regular process, and we don't have to get into it because it does not include building a new structure.
So if I'm hearing correctly, is that at this point, there is an interest to hear CUPs when we already know the use that's going into a new project in association with bringing the approvals for the new project. If there is a use associated with it that requires a CUP, you mentioned the IMUR in this on San Fernando Road corridor, which is outside the DSP, but there are some such uses in the DSP as well, that we would bring those to you.
East Broadway.
East Broadway. If you will, in a couple of slides later, Tim has actually listed some uses that tend to be the more controversial uses that you might want to also consider as
getting at use of alcohol. So in essence, we'd be deciding on whether somebody could serve alcohol in a building that is having a change of use.
This actually is the the entire universe of CUPs that were in the DSP. I think this was July 2003 to July 2006. It was a 3-year period. A lot of them were pretty minor things. Probably would fall into the category of clogging up your agenda.
Any of these have been appealed to us?
I don't know, not that I'm aware of, but not that I can recall.
I don't remember any alcohol use or any dance use or arcade use.
Mr. Nukin?
You know, in situations like this, I think it's important to have a flow chart to see where, because we're taking bits and pieces of the process that most people go through and trying to adjust it. It would be nice to have a flow chart as to, so we can point and say, this is the process they have to go through, and this is the process we're proposing. Taking this conditional use permit issue, frankly, I'd rather have either redevelopment or council see less of it unless there's an issue, and not have it all come up through us, whether it's new construction or change of use. Personally, the professionals would better be able to deal with it than come up to the council or the redevelopment agency.
I tend to feel the same way, because if it's going to be alcohol, you're going to have the police involved. They're going to talk about the concentration of alcohol-serving locations in the immediate area, whether they've had problems in the area, things like that I think are better served at the zoning administrator's level than bringing it up here and letting us look at it more in isolation than the zoning administrator would. Mr. Lazenfang, did you want to say something?
Okay, let me give an example. Let's take a hotel on Brand Boulevard. This is what we want in the city.
A new hotel or an existing?
A new hotel.
Okay.
I don't know if there is any existing hotel on Brand Boulevard. Let's say
there are actually.
Let's say there's a brand new hotel coming on Brand Boulevard. That hotel is going to require a CUP for alcohol because they have a restaurant within the conjunction of the hotel. Okay. That hotel is going to require a dance permit because they also have a banquet facility and they want to have dance permit there. That hotel may require to have, let's say, some type of a variance because we decided in the design that was submitted to us, it has some kind of embellishments to the hotel that makes it go above the height that is in the code, but it just embellishments. There is no occupancy there. And we like that as a design review, and we told the applicant, build it this way because I like that spire, and they built that. Now, currently in the system, we won't be granting any of those things. So we tell the guy, build the hotel this way, do this, do that, all that stuff, and then now he has to go out there and do these other things. I don't think that system is any different than what we did with the town center. We included all of those items, and we voted on it for the town center project. Granted, it's big as far as area is concerned, but we granted him all his alcohol use permits, we granted all his CUPs, and everything else that went with it. And that's the way I think about this. If you're going to do this on one subject property...
That was a DDA, though. It was according...
I understand that.
Mr. Lazenfang.
Mr. Mayor, let me perhaps give you some input as to some of the difficulty that staff faces, not only in terms of streamlining, because you would have in an agency project that requires a CUP, you would have stage one, they would do their environmental, they would come back to you with their environmental, then they would go to a CUP hearing. Let's assume for a second they get their CUP, then they come back to you. that's going back and forth a lot of times without looking at it holistically. Now, when you do look at it holistically,
Exactly what does looking
you look at it all together.
Holistically, holistic for me means...
This is not religion.
Right.
You look at everything together, and here's some of the difficulty that we run into. If you take the CUP before you design your final design, the zoning administrator doesn't know what that final design is going to be before she puts conditions on. If you do it the other way and do it afterwards, you might be considering a final design without knowing what those conditions are. If you can look at them all together, then you can marry the conditions with the design.
Pleasant fame. What if? And what if we leave it to staff to say, okay, this is a major project. This is one that the advantages are to the developer or whatever and the city staff to bring this all forward to the city council, the CUP and everything. And if they're minor, staff goes ahead and does it the way they've done with the zoning administrator. But you can make a decision. You know where it's going to benefit the city and the developer as opposed to impeding the process and continuing it the way you say. Mr. Herbert?
Mr. Mayor, following that thinking, I'm just wondering if when you have a project, and the downtown specific plan anticipated the use of this mechanism, which is a development agreement, when you have a project that rises to a level of meriting a development agreement, then you probably have a lot of these kinds of characteristics embedded in the project, whether it's a hotel or a big condo project or a big office project or a multi-use project. And I'm wondering if that couldn't be the distinction, that all of these, when you have a project that rises to a level of meriting a development agreement, all these things get rolled into it, and the agency, city council hear it all as part of passing on the development agreement. Is that doable? It just seems that could be a good distinction for most big projects.
Yeah, that sounds a lot more reasonable than sitting here and doing CUPs for individual business opportunities as they arrive.
Well, and I would think a project of a major nature, you're going to want to see all those things at once.
Can you repeat that concept again, Jim?
Well, I think Michael...
I just thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The only comment I was going to have with respect to the development agreement, any project under the DSP that's going to require incentive is going to require a development agreement. So all those projects could get wrapped into it. If you have a project, though, that doesn't require a development agreement, can be approved by right under the DSP, but still needs maybe a CUP or another type of permit.
But I think that could be a distinction for staff to make, that when you have a project that is multifaceted, new, and fairly significant, even if it doesn't ask for any of the incentives, then you know what, this is a good one for a development agreement. Let's wrap all those issues into a development agreement, bring them to city council, agency, so you can pass on them all as one big package and memorialize them in a DA as opposed to individual actions. It did seem pretty cumbersome when we passed on the Americana, although we had a specific plan and a DA and a disposition and development agreement. It then had to go back for individual approvals for individual restaurants within that, right?
No, it was all wrapped in the plan, I believe.
We gave them a certain number.
That's correct.
Okay.
That was the...
Okay, we gave them a certain number.
All right.
But it seems to make more sense to go that route. Smoother, whatever. Hassan, were you going to add anything to it?
It is smooth to go when we are using a development agreement, which is going to be most of, actually, if not every major project in the DSP area will require a development agreement. There is, in addition to that, for the projects that may not require a development agreement, it is possible to write a clause in the downtown specific plan that says that projects of significance that we could create some sort of an authority that we can automatically, actually, from the beginning of an application, say that all of the discretionary permits for this one will be reviewed by council agency. It's possible. And I have seen that in other cities that the lower review authorities, if I may, can actually pass on the review, relinquish the review of a certain level of project to the higher body. And we could do the same thing here. We could say if there is a project that has, in addition to design review, a number of discretionary permits associated with it, that we could package them at once and bring them directly to the council agency. That would be the easy way to cut through that when we do not have a development agreement at our disposal.
What criteria would you use? Square footage or type of business, or how would you go about setting the standard?
Mr.
Well, it seems to me it might be a combination of those things. I mean, let's say you've got a project that has a number of what would otherwise be individual reviews and approvals, a CUP, a variance, maybe there's public dance, one of those things, and it happens to be greater, maybe it's in an existing building, but it happens to be a significant portion of it, 5, 10, 15,000 square feet, where you're going to have design review, you're going to have a CUP, you're going to have a lot of these same components you might in a new project. I would think from the applicant's standpoint, it can certainly help them expedite the process rather than have to walk down multiple paths on multiple approvals. Put them all together in one package and let it all be approved as one package.
We've already been told that. That's the advantages to them. Time is money.
One way to do that would be to actually give the applicant the option of actually requesting that in their application. If they have multiple reviews, that they could request that, and then we could process it as such.
Okay. Next.
Your mic?
This is just a slide that shows the uses in the DSP that require a conditional use permit. And the ones at the top are the ones that, perhaps the most impactful, and at the bottom, less so. So I think we have direction from you on CUPs that you'd like to explore, tying it with development agreement? Yeah. I'm sorry?
We probably covered all of the slides.
No, they did that already.
Yes, to some degree.
One you're looking at, they did.
Our discussions covered everything.
Yeah, they showed that. And they showed that one when we were talking about how many and what areas.
Okay. Variances fall into two categories: standards variances and use variances. Standards variances are much more numerous and are associated with new construction for the most part. This is the universe of variances in 3 years.
Well, the first one is going to be the big ticket one in the future.
Well, to a certain extent, we have addressed the issues surrounding why the projects required variances in the DSP area prior to the adoption of the DSP area. We did have a lack of standards to a certain extent, and some standards that were too forbidding, and some standards that were just too unlimited, and the combination of the two caused a lot of anguish and confusion in the development community, so we had to deal with things through the variances. The downtown specific plan has built in a lot of flexibility in the different districts, at the same time establishing the parameters for how development should take place. So that should really eliminate the need for a lot of the standards variances. The only standard variances that we might expect is in the first year of practicing the downtown specific plan, we might find out that some of our calculations may be just a little bit off, that may need some tweaking, for example, FARs in certain locations. I think, but other than that, we don't expect a whole lot like we did in the past.
I think that with the one, I don't know if it's the hotel condo complex, whatever, we thought there'd be 10 to 12 variance requirements prior to the adjustment to the zoning and use downtown, right?
Correct.
And that's totally eliminated now.
That has been eliminated. And now that the districts have actually defined the characters that the properties in each district really need to abide by, the arguments for the variances to bring a property to parity with other property in the same vicinity becomes much more constrained, so you will have really to work a little bit harder to make the variance findings.
Okay. Next.
Similar to the discussion we had with CUPs, I think the question we would ask is whether you would like to hear variances with new construction. Obviously, the standards variances are pretty intimately tied to the design of the building, so it's
going to be few and in between, far and few between that we have them, and why wouldn't the same process be followed?
Right. Even in the last 3 years, we only had 5 that were related to the construction of new buildings. There were a couple of parking design standard ones. To my mind, it makes sense to package that together with design review that you're doing. And then if there's a later variance on an existing building, let it be heard by the ZA. Would be our
Mr. Second?
I'm just trying to cut through all of this. So you can actually create a system that an applicant can walk in through the door and say, I'm building a 100,000 square foot office building. It's going to require a CUP, it's going to require a variance, it's going to require this, that, and all kinds of stuff. And I would like to package that together under a development agreement and submit that. We can have a process like that.
Yes, we could have a process like that, and we could even have a process simpler than that, that they could actually request to apply to go directly to the council agency for review and bypass the ZA and all other review processes, even if they don't have a development agreement.
Well, I have an issue with that, because then every Jack and Harry is going to walk in, is going to say, listen, I want to turn this restaurant into a dance hall, and I don't want to go through you guys, send me over to the city. And then everybody's going to be coming to us, and this process is not going to get faster, it's going to get much, much slower. So I think there needs to be some kind of a threshold of what is it that we want to do.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that when things come to us, it gets slower?
No, when you have 50 things to deal with every week, believe me, we're not going to be able to handle it. The issue isn't that we are not able to give a good judgment, it's just that the magnitude gets huge, because now somebody says, I want a new sign program. Guess what? I don't want to go to the ZA, I want to go to council. The next one will come in and says, change your use, I want to go from a restaurant to a dance hall, I want to go to council. I mean, anybody can do this, and then it becomes completely out of control.
Right.
We need to have some kind of a threshold and say, okay, these are new buildings, there's a threshold of a certain square footage, and that is significant, it makes some impact, and then it comes to us. And that's, to me, that's what's the pertinent.
Without knowing the legal parameters of how the development agreement process would actually apply to variances and CUPs. Well, to variances, actually, I'm a little bit more clear than CUPs here. Then we would have to talk with the city attorney and city attorney's department a little bit about that. I believe it's possible to create such a system that people could request a development agreement, and when it's justified, to actually package all of these things at once to bring them directly to council agency.
Can we put a threshold, city attorney, like 10,000 square feet? I mean, that's a pretty sizable.
And in fact, it's a threshold we have in the San Fernando Road zone for a lot of things.
We do, so it's consistent with San Fernando.
I think if you can give us that kind of sentiment, we can go work on something and bring you back a structure that will apply to the unusual and significant projects, so that every person can't come to the council thinking they're going to expedite their process, or it will bog you down.
Yeah.
And frankly, there's a good reason to have these issues vetted out at your lower commission levels. One, there is a lot of work and iteration sometimes it takes to get a project to where it's in a form that can be approved. You don't necessarily want that happening at this level.
Does 10,000 sound gut feeling that that's a good number? Do you want just to be given direction?
Let me suggest we work on that. Generally, if that kind of approach works for you, then let us work on something we think will meet the threshold, and we'll bring a structure back to you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, one other thing. On the current GRA design review process, what we do is we go to DRB first, then we come to GRA, and then we give directions, and in some cases the directions are barely anything if there is nothing wrong with it. And then we wait for all the neg deck or CUP or whatever, and then we look for then we go back to design review again, and then we come back to us. I am a thought process that since we already design reviewed it, unless we say we wanted to go back to design review, maybe we can cut that out. That would eliminate at least a 3 months wait for these poor people. And we already seen it, for example, today's. If we had seen it the first time, which we saw it for the first time, we did stage 1 and 2 combined. But we would have seen it, and if we liked it, they would have had gone back to design review again for no reason at all, but they would have had to because it's the process. You guys have any issues with that?
Tom, what do you think?
Actually, that is one of the cleanup items that we have. We actually do recommend to reduce the number of times we go back to the DRB because the agency is the final review authority for the projects in the redevelopment area. And in the DSP area, we now have the advantage of having a principal urban designer that really works with the applicants from the beginning, and we manage to bring in the applications by the time that they have really developed the design way further than what we used to before. So we get really good projects coming to you. So I think we will not hurt by reducing the number of times we'll go to DRB.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm fine.
Yeah, that's actually our first bullet there. And then the second one is whether you wanted to expand the review authority and design review to the non-agency areas, the south side of Colorado, west of Central, and the East Broadway area. And this is what we did in, I think, the same 3-year period.
633 East Broadway, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We looked at it, the seismic retrofit.
Well, you did because you were funding it. But
Yeah, we didn't look at it for design or...
Yeah, the one at 100 West Colorado and then 343 North Central are pretty small. The other ones get into larger scale. I guess it just depends on whether you're satisfied with
I wouldn't want
the
to get
designs
into
are turning
all
out
that.
on a DRB or whether you
Okay, what example are you
I
going to
like, across on Colorado, we're talking about possibly another hotel we've heard about, which I've also heard about. The corner property on Central and Colorado also is purchased by one of our developers that we know. And these, I think some of these things are in the area. That's one of the reasons we put them in the downtown specific plan, because they relate to surrounding areas. What is going to go on the other side of Central has some relevance
Well, there's
to
two
what's
now.
on this side of Central, yeah.
But maybe, again, we tied down the square footages, a certain minimum that doesn't come to us again.
Right, I would agree. I would say the same threshold, I would put the same threshold on those.
Take a look at that, because hotels and big condo complexes bordering, we should be looking at.
So look at using the same mechanism in the
Yeah.
DSP city portion.
Right.
Yeah, come back to us and tell us what you think.
Very good. All right.
That should do it.
We're done.
Yeah, there minor parking permits. The parking exception is available only in the agency area. These other parking permits apply in the non-agency areas, and again, we can just package them.
I think we can address all of that when we talk about the overall concept you've defined, if that's acceptable to you.
Okay? Acceptable, my colleagues?
Mr. Mayor, I think we have
2 cards.
Yeah.
Rodney Kahn, 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Once again, Rodney Kahn. My offices are here in the city of Glendale. Just a couple quick points. I agree completely with this concept. I think it's a great idea.
Much.
Yeah.
Oh, more?
The new construction, I have 2 more minutes. The new construction with the thresholds makes a lot of sense, whatever those
Rodney,
thresholds are.
You could do that commercial they have for head-on. You could say, I agree, I agree, I agree, I agree.
That's not taking up my time right now, is it?
No, I'll give you more.
Thanks. I was wondering, though, in terms of, is it also not just, I think it's a great idea for the downtown specific plan area, both in the redevelopment area and outside of it, but also are you looking at San Fernando Road as well? Because that's a redevelopment project area as well. And I don't know if the same...
Does the redevelopment area include that?
I'm sorry?
This is just the downtown?
Maybe Hassan can address that. The San Fernando corridor area, the same issues. Is it covered there, or do we have to deal with that separately?
I think the design review issue that we talked about would cover San Fernando Road. This CUP issue that, and actually that was the example that Councilman Yusefian brought up. That would not be covered because on along the San Fernando Road corridor, we do not have a process in place to use development agreement. If the development agreement is going to be the tool we're going to use, then it's not available. We'd have to address it some other way, and we can come up with an option for that.
Well, can that be put into San Fernando corridor? Can we amend that to put that in there?
Why,
Can staff look at it?
I think if you could finish your comments.
Okay.
If you have anything else.
No, that's really all I wanted to ask as it relates to that.
Why can't we standardize all these processes? Why do we need one process in one area, another process in another area, and maybe we'll come up with something to fix the other area? Why can't we have a standard process for all the redevelopment areas and standard process throughout the rest of the city with dealing with all of these issues? Why do we need to come up with specific things for specific areas?
We could certainly do that. We could standardize the practice that would apply in the DSP.
That's where people run into problems. Yeah, because in one area it's one way, in another area it's another way.
Why don't you look at standardizing? Mr. Starbird.
Well, immediate thought is that may just be workload looking at the whole city. But you can still have a threshold above a certain size. But there's
but the issue is, why is one redevelopment area is different than the other?
I understand that. You mentioned, though, why can't the whole city be the same?
Right, because we were talking some areas that are outside of the redevelopment area as well. So, we're creating more processes.
I think the answer is it relates to redevelopment areas. We only have 2 of them, and they can be the same. Looking at the implications, they could be the same. We'll look at that as we look at this structure.
Part of it, to add, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Chair, members of the agency, are the legal tools available to you to be able to do that, to standardize it. With the development agreement, you have a much easier tool. You have essentially a tool that you can take these other components and put within that tool, and then you get it. With the San Fernando Road corridor, we don't have that. So we need to look at whether we can use a development agreement as a tool there, and that's a little bit bigger task.
So we can't have a development agreement in the San Fernando
Road?
And
that's not what I said. So we just have to look at how we amend the code to accomplish that. Right now...
Currently we don't have that.
Currently we don't have that.
That doesn't mean you couldn't.
Doesn't mean
I think part of, if it's your desire, part of what we look at in the structure is, can we make San Fernando consistent with the DSP project area?
Yeah,
we'll
certainly. I'm with him. I think that's a good idea.
Not just the DSP, a redevelopment area, basically. Does the DSP include all of the redevelopment area and more, right?
The DSP is the central project area and more. San Fernando is the second and separate project area. So what I hear you suggesting is, in the same way we try and have consistency for the project area and city, in the DSP, we'd see if we can apply that same kind of structure to the San Fernando corridor.
Right. Mr. Lazafreni?
And I would just add, I had conferred with the city attorney earlier, the design review process is by policy. With the direction that I believe you've given us today, we'll do a streamlined design review. That is, we'll go to DRB once and not for Stage 2, given your direction today. We'll do that in both project areas starting immediately.
Okay. Thank you.
That was easy.
Next speaker.
Let me make a suggestion. I suggested a flow chart. Once this is over, I think we should have a flow chart and give it to everyone that comes to us. On a tax return, they have flow chart. If one individual is a dependent, you go through a flow chart and you kind of decide. Same way. If you're in development area, you go this way. If you're not, this way. So people at least know where they need to go. And
I think
yes, it's tax season.
The flow chart is very
So we
helpful.
want it as simple as your tax return, is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely.
And just like project managers do.
Yeah.
We use flow charts too. Okay, next speaker, Herbert Milano.
Thank you, Mayor Weaver, members of the City Council. My name is Herbert Milano. As I listen to you and to see what kind of thresholds you will use to listen to these variances in CUPs, I keep thinking about how these particular thresholds could be aligned with regard to the measurements and the goals of each specific element and the overall general plan. Is what I don't see, is what I don't hear. If I begin to take a look again at the need for parkland, had we had a cumulative report of the deficiencies of parkland and the overall objectives as stated in the recreation element. The recreation element, if you take a look at it again, gave very specific targets and objectives for every 5 years. So we have an objective for the year 2010 of 2 acres per 1,000 people. As you're looking at other objectives with regard to the variances that may impact traffic flow, for example, if we don't have a cumulative measure out there, so I'm suggesting something of a percentage with regard to that cumulative measure. If we're making variances with regard to an area that belongs to the downtown specific plan, but it's going to impact the residences next to it, well, I think that we should be looking at overall how that fits with the land use element or with the recreational element or any of the other elements. But you're never addressing how it impacts the top level, which I think is where you are. If you are managing from the very top level, then the threshold should be how does it impact our overall goals for the area, whether it be traffic or parkland or or population growth. So anyway, that's my suggestion.
Do you second?
You don't think that the EIR or the NEC deck deals with some of those issues?
Unfortunately, it doesn't. I just took a look at the EIR with regard to the previous project you consider, and it basically just doesn't give it credence. If we're going to increase 154 people in a particular area, well, that's maybe 15%. We just increased the area by 15% population with regard to the use of parks, for example. So you can say if it's going to impact it by 10%, then we should check it against our goals and objectives with what we need to allocate in the future. So you could be in deficit for a certain amount, or you can say we're now at the end of this year in deficit to the tune of maybe 2 acres or 3 acres based upon the cumulative impact of these projects. So you're always looking at it, you're tying it in back to the elements and to the objectives set out in the element. And I think that's where a corporate unit usually comes in. Not so much at the specific, but basically at a more top level.
Thank you. One other thing I would like staff to also do, as they're doing Mr. Manukian's suggested matrix. I like to have a matrix created of how the process works today, a timeline, a flow chart, and have a timeline attached to that. How long it takes to get a variance and this and that, what are the time schedules on that, and then show me the new flow chart and show me the timeline on that. So I want to see if we're going to go through this exercise, is there going to be some change as far as is there any improvement in the time, because that's what everybody is complaining constantly, the city takes too long and so on and so forth. I think there would be, but I like to see what that number is. I don't know. Is it going to be 3 weeks? Is it going to be 2 months? Is it going to be 4 months? What is it going to be? And so that would be very helpful too. So when some of our people come in here and say how you measure and performance, we could tell them we've measured it, this is what it was, and we measure it according to this, and this is what it is, and these are actual numbers.
Okay, with that.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Well, for council, second for council, and I'll move for redevelopment.
Second. We're adjourned for redevelopment.
I would just like to thank staff. Get that in before we adjourn. Thank you.